The crystal glasses were still ringing from the toast when my son's palm connected with my face. The sound echoed through the dining room like a gunshot, silencing the laughter and chatter of 14 family members gathered around our Thanksgiving table. My cheek burned with more than just the physical impact. It burned with the betrayal of 30 years of unconditional love reduced to the single violent moment. I touched my face slowly, feeling the heat radiating from where Kevin's hand had struck me. My grandson Tyler dropped his fork, the clatter breaking the stunned silence. My 16-year-old granddaughter Emma fumbled with her phone, her eyes wide with shock as she instinctively started recording. "Grandma?" Emma's voice cracked, barely a whisper. Kevin stood over me, his face twisted with an anger I'd never seen before. This wasn't my boy, the one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who I'd raised alone after his father's heart attack took him from us when Kevin was only 7. This was a stranger wearing my son's face. "Don't you ever question me about money again," he snarled, his lawyer's voice sharp as broken glass. "Do you understand me, mother?"
Before we continue with this story, if you're feeling as stunned as I was in that moment, please take a second to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below. What would you do if your own child raised a hand to you? Your thoughts matter to me, just as I once thought I mattered to my son. Rachel, my daughter-in-law, sat back in her chair with a satisfied smirk playing on her lips. She swirled her wine glass, my mother's crystal that I'd given them last Christmas, and spoke with practiced calm. "She's been asking for it, Kevin. You know how aggressive dementia patients can become. This is exactly why we need to take action." Dementia? My mind, sharp as the day I graduated nursing school 50 years ago, reeled at the accusation. But suddenly, pieces of a puzzle I didn't know I'd been assembling clicked into place. "You're becoming a problem, Mother," Kevin said, straightening his tie, the one I'd bought him for his birthday. "We can't have you making scenes about imaginary missing money. It's embarrassing." Imaginary? 3 days ago, I discovered $50,000 had vanished from my savings account. The account I'd built over 40 years of night shifts, double shifts, and holidays spent caring for other people's families while saving every penny for my retirement. The account that was supposed to ensure I'd never be a burden to anyone. I pushed myself up from my chair, my legs surprisingly steady despite the shock coursing through my veins. At 75, I'd faced down violent patients in the ICU, held the hands of the dying, and raised a child alone in a world that showed no mercy to single mothers. I would not cower now. "I raised you alone after your father died," I said, my voice carrying the strength of 3 decades of sacrifice. "I worked 16-hour shifts to put you through law school. I went without so you could have everything. Is this how you repay 30 years of sacrifice?" Kevin's face flushed darker. "You're losing your mind. We found your secret withdrawals. $50,000 doesn't just disappear, Mother. You've been hiding money, probably stuffing it in mattresses or burying it in the yard like some paranoid old woman." The extended family, Kevin's cousins, their spouses, my sister Margaret, sat frozen, forks suspended midway to mouths as our family drama unfolded before them like a horrific stage play. No one moved to help me. No one spoke in my defense. But I had a card they didn't know I held. "Is that the story you're going with?" I asked, reaching for my purse despite Rachel's sharp intake of breath. "Because the bank has a very different version. They have security footage, Kevin, crystal clear footage of someone forging my signature on withdrawal slips." Rachel's wine glass slipped, red liquid splashing across my grandmother's white tablecloth like blood. She grabbed Kevin's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. "She's lying," Rachel hissed, but her voice had lost its smooth confidence. "Kevin, she's clearly having an episode. We need to..." The bank manager called it elder fraud, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. He said forging signatures is a federal crime. He was quite helpful, actually, showed me everything. Kevin's anger cracked, revealing something else underneath. Fear? Guilt? He glanced at Rachel, and in that moment, I saw the truth. This wasn't just his doing. This was orchestrated, planned, calculated.
Enough! Kevin slammed his hand on the table, making the china jump. You want to know the truth, Mother? Fine. We're taking you to Sunset Manor tomorrow morning. The paperwork is already filed. A nice judge, a friend from law school, agreed that you're no longer capable of managing your affairs. Sunset Manor? I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew that place. A warehouse for the forgotten elderly, where patients sat in soiled clothes waiting for death, where my former colleague Martha had died alone last year, her children too busy to visit. It's for your own good, Rachel added, her composure returning now that their plan was in the open. You'll be safe there, cared for, and we'll manage your finances so you don't have to worry about misplacing any more money. Emma stood abruptly, her phone still recording. Dad, what are you doing? This is Grandma. She's not crazy. Sit down, Emma, Kevin commanded without looking at his daughter. This is adult business. But Emma remained standing, tears streaming down her face. No, I won't let you do this to her. Grandma took care of me when Mom was too busy with her blog. She's the one who actually loves us. Emma, Rachel shrieked, her mask finally slipping completely. Go to your room, now. The room erupted. My sister Margaret finally found her voice, yelling at Kevin about family loyalty. Cousins argued amongst themselves. Tyler started crying. And through it all, I stood perfectly still, my hand pressed against my burning cheek, watching my family fracture like a mirror struck by a stone. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. Because what they didn't know, what I hadn't told anyone, was that the missing $50,000 was just the beginning. 2 days ago, I discovered something far worse, something that would destroy more than just our family dinner. My son hadn't just stolen my money, he'd stolen my entire future, piece by piece, while looking me in the eye and calling me Mom. And now, with my cheeks still stinging from his slap and my family in chaos around me, I realized a terrible truth. The boy I'd sacrificed everything for had become a monster. But monsters, I'd learned in my 75 years, could be defeated, even when they were the face of someone you loved.
3 days earlier. The ATM screen might as well have slapped me then, too. Insufficient funds blinked in red letters so bright they seemed to burn through my retinas and sear themselves into my brain. I stood there in the November cold outside the Chase Bank on High Street, my arthritic fingers trembling as I inserted my card for the third time. Same result. My savings account, the one containing $127,000 that I'd scraped together over 40 years of cleaning bedpans, inserting IVs, and holding the hands of the dying, showed a balance of $77,000. $50,000. Gone. Vanished like my husband's last breath all those years ago, leaving nothing but emptiness and questions. I clutched my chest, feeling my heart skip and stutter like a broken metronome. Not now, I begged silently. Not a heart attack in the street like Harold. But it wasn't my heart failing. It was breaking. Because deep in my bones, in that place where mothers know truths before their minds accept them, I already knew. The bank manager, Mr. Peterson, was a kind man who'd helped me set up my accounts after Harold died. He remembered me, pulled me into his office when he saw my face, gray as winter ash, he'd later tell his wife. Mrs. Wash, please sit down. You look... let me get you some water. The money, I whispered, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else, someone already defeated. $50,000 is missing from my account. His fingers flew across the keyboard, and then his face changed, that careful professional mask that people wear when delivering terrible news. I'd worn it myself countless times in the ICU. Mrs. Walsh, according to our records, you authorized this transfer last month, October 15th to be precise, to the Walsh Family Trust. My voice cracked like dried leaves. I don't even know what that is. I never authorized anything. He turned his monitor toward me, and there it was, my signature on transfer documents. But something was wrong. The D in Dorothy was too looped, the W in Walsh too sharp. I'd signed my name thousands of times on medical charts. This wasn't my hand. I'd like to see this security footage, I said, my nurse's instincts kicking in. Document everything. Trust nothing without evidence.
Mr. Peterson hesitated. That's not typically. Please. I reached across his desk, my weathered hand covering his smooth one. I worked at Riverside Hospital for 35 years. I saved every penny of overtime. This money, it's all I have. Maybe it was the desperation in my voice, or maybe he saw his own mother in my pleading eyes, but he nodded. The footage was grainy but clear enough. A woman in sunglasses and a coat. My coat, the red wool one Kevin bought me last Christmas, standing at the teller window. She kept her head down, but when she turned to leave, I saw it. The distinctive way she touched her hair, smoothing it behind her ear with her ring finger. Rachel. My daughter-in-law. The woman who complained that my Christmas gifts were too pedestrian, who rolled her eyes when I offered to cook Sunday dinners, who told her lifestyle blog followers that dealing with elderly in-laws was a journey in patience. I must have made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob, because Mr. Peterson grabbed my arm. Mrs. Walsh, should I call someone? Your son, perhaps? No! The word erupted from me with such force that he jerked back. No, please. I need copies of everything. The transfer documents, the footage, everything. He studied my face, and something in my expression must have told him what I couldn't say aloud, that calling my son would be like calling the wolf to protect the sheep. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one that Kevin had done his homework for 18 years, and spread out the evidence like a crime scene investigator, which I supposed I was. The Walsh Family Trust. I Googled it with shaking fingers on the laptop Emma had taught me to use. Nothing. But when I searched the address listed on the transfer documents, I found something that made my blood run Antarctic cold. It was a P.O. box registered to R. Walsh Enterprises, LLC. R. Walsh. Rachel Walsh. My hands trembled so violently I could barely type as I logged into my other accounts. Retirement fund. Credit union savings. The small investment account Harold had started for Kevin's college that I'd never touched, keeping it like a shrine to my husband's dreams. One by one, the screens revealed the carnage. $30,000 from retirement. Authorized 2 weeks ago. $45,000 from the credit union. Transferred last week. $75,000 from investments. Liquidated yesterday.
$200,000? My entire life's work, decades of sacrifice, double shifts that left my feet so swollen I'd soak them in Epsom salt while Kevin slept. Gone. I stumbled to Kevin's home office. He still kept a key under the ceramic frog I'd made him in kindergarten, still trusted his mother that much. His files were meticulous, organized like the lawyer he was. And there, in a folder marked estate planning,
I found them. Power of attorney documents with my signature, that same forged signature. Papers declaring me mentally incompetent, signed by a Dr. Marcus Ellison, a psychiatrist I'd never met. Bank account modifications, investment authorizations, and at the bottom of the stack, like a final insult, commitment papers for Sunset Manor Assisted Living, dated 2 weeks in the future. They weren't just stealing from me, they were erasing me. I sank into Kevin's leather chair, bought with money I'd given him for his practice, and let the tears come. Not gentle tears, but the ugly, body-shaking sobs of a mother realizing her child had become her executioner. Then I heard it. Voices from the kitchen. Can't keep this up much longer. Rachel's voice, sharp with irritation. She's bound to check her accounts eventually. My body went rigid. They were here, in the house. Relax, another voice. Male, but not Kevin. Deeper, unfamiliar. Once she's in the home, we can liquidate everything. The house alone is worth what, $400,000? My house. The house Harold and I bought with our bare hands and desperate dreams, where Kevin took his first steps, where I rocked him through fever and heartbreak. Kevin's getting cold feet, Rachel said. He actually asked if we should slow down, maybe talk to her first. The man laughed, like a sound of glass breaking. Your husband needs to remember what's at stake. His gambling debts won't pay themselves. My associates aren't known for their patience. Gambling debts? My Kevin, who I taught to save his allowance, who'd worked summers to help with bills. He'll fall in line, Rachel assured him, especially after Thanksgiving, a public scene, witnesses to her deteriorating mental state, and any judge will expedite the commitment order. And if she fights back? I heard the smile in Rachel's voice. She's a 75-year-old woman who thinks her son hung the moon. She won't fight. She'll go quietly, the way her generation always does, respecting authority, not making waves. My hand found my phone in my pocket. With trembling fingers, I opened the recording app Emma had installed. For grocery lists, Grandma. I pressed record, just as Rachel continued. The beautiful part is, she'll probably thank Kevin for taking care of her, right up until the doors of Sunset Manor close behind her. Cold, the man said, but with admiration. I like it. What about the granddaughter? She seems attached. Emma's a teenager. They're self-absorbed. Give her a new iPhone, promise her a car for her birthday. She'll forget all about dear old Grandma. Each word was a needle in my heart, but I kept recording. The nurse in me knew. Documentation saves lives. Tomorrow, I'll plant the final evidence. Cash hidden around her house, nonsensical notes, maybe some unwashed dishes. Classic dementia signs. Kevin can discover them, act shocked and heartbroken. Your husband's performance better be convincing. Oh, it will be. He's had practice. He's been lying to her for 2 years about where her birthday and Christmas money goes. The woman still thinks he's saving for Emma's college fund. 2 years. 2 years of, I love you, Mom, and thanks for everything, Mom, while they plotted my destruction. The front door opened and Kevin's voice joined them. Is she home? Her car's not here, probably at one of her ridiculous charity meetings. I don't like this, Kevin said, and for a moment, one pathetic, desperate moment, I felt hope. She's my mother. Maybe we should... What? Rachel's voice turned sharp. Tell her the truth? That you lost $200,000 at the casino? That you borrowed from people who break legs? That the only way to save your career and your kneecaps is to use her money? Silence. Then Kevin's voice, smaller now, defeated. No. Then man up. Your mother had her life. She's old. What does she need money for anyway? Bingo? Medication she'll forget to take? At least this way her savings will actually mean something. Save her son. Isn't that what mothers do? You're right, Kevin said, and I heard him kiss her. The same lips that used to kiss my forehead goodnight.
She'd probably want this if she knew. I bit my hand to keep from screaming. Blood filled my mouth. Copper and betrayal. They talked for 20 more minutes. Details about moving money, about Mark Thompson, the man's name apparently, and his connections. About how they'd already sold my information to identity thieves who'd open credit cards once I was safely tucked away. About how Kevin had practiced my signature for weeks until it was perfect. My son, whom I taught to write his name, had learned to forge mine. When they finally left, I sat in the darkness for an hour, phone clutched in my hand, recording saved and backed up to the cloud Emma had set up for me. Then I did what any good nurse does in an emergency. I triaged. First, secure the patient, myself. I drove to the bank and withdrew what little remained in my accounts, opened a new account at a different bank under my maiden name. Second, document everything. I made copies of every forged document, every bank statement, every piece of evidence. Third, find allies. I thought of Grace Bishop next door, who'd noticed Rachel leaving with boxes from my garage last month. Just decluttering from Mom, Rachel had said. Now I wondered what family heirlooms had been sold. But most importantly, I began to plan. They wanted a scene at Thanksgiving? They'd get one. They wanted to paint me as a crazy old woman? Let them try. Because what Rachel didn't understand, what my son had forgotten, was that I wasn't just any 75-year-old woman. I was a nurse who'd faced down death itself for decades. I'd watched families torn apart by greed in hospital rooms, seen children fight over their parents' bodies before they were even cold. I knew what humans were capable of. And now, sitting in my empty house, surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal, I knew something else. Sometimes a mother's love means knowing when to stop loving. Sometimes it means fighting back. Sometimes it means destroying the very child you created to save what's left of your soul. The slap would come at dinner. I knew that now. Could almost feel my future self's cheek burning. But they didn't know what would come after.
Back to the present, after the slap. The sting on my cheek pulsed with my heartbeat, each throb a reminder that my son, my baby boy, had just struck me in front of 14 witnesses. But pain had been my companion for 50 years in the ICU. I'd learned to breathe through it, to find clarity in its sharp edges. I have copies of everything, I said, my voice cutting through the dining room chaos like a scalpel through flesh. The forged signatures, the recorded conversations, the identity theft, everything. Kevin's face drained of color so fast I thought he might faint. Rachel shot up from her chair, her wine glass shattering on the floor, red liquid spreading like the blood I'd mopped from emergency room floors for decades. "You're lying," Rachel snarled, but her voice cracked like ice under pressure. "Kevin, she's having a psychotic episode. We need to call Sunset Manor now." "The FBI will be very interested," I continued, each word deliberate, measured, the way I used to speak to families when delivering terminal diagnoses. Identity theft across state lines, wire fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy. Oh, and Mark Thompson's money laundering operation that you've been using to hide my funds. Rachel lunged. It happened so fast that later witnesses would give conflicting accounts, but I saw it all with the hyper-clarity that comes from years of watching for patient attacks in psychotic wards. Her manicured nails aimed for my purse, where she correctly guessed I kept the evidence. Her designer heel caught in my grandmother's Persian rug. The momentum carried her forward, and her hands, instead of grabbing my bag, slammed into my chest. I fell backward, my hip hitting the corner of the buffet table with a crack that echoed through my bones. The pain was exquisite,
white hot, but I'd delivered babies with broken ribs before. Pain was just information. "Grandma!" Emma screamed, dropping to her knees beside me. Her phone clattered on the hardwood, still recording, capturing everything. "Don't touch her," Rachel shrieked. "She can claim assault. Everyone saw her fall on her own." The front door burst open with such force it bounced off the wall. Grace Bishop stood there like an avenging angel in her Thanksgiving cardigan, and beside her, still in uniform, stood her son, Officer Michael Bishop. Behind them, another man in a suit that screamed federal agent. "I called them when I heard the slap," Grace announced, stepping over the threshold like she was crossing into battle. "These walls are thin, Dorothy. I've been listening to and documenting every cruel word that woman has said to you for 3 years.
Rachel's face went from pale to corpse gray. "You can't. This is a private family matter." "Not anymore," Officer Bishop said, his hand resting on his radio. "I need everyone to remain calm. We received a report of elder abuse in progress." "This is ridiculous." Kevin found his voice, his lawyer's instincts kicking in. "I'm calling my attorney. This is my house, and I want you all to leave." "Actually," I said from the floor, Emma helping me sit up despite the lightning bolts of pain shooting through my hip, "it's my house. Has been since you forged my signature on a quitclaim deed to protect it from estate taxes. Except you never filed it. I checked yesterday." The silence that followed was beautiful, like the moment after a code blue when the heart monitor finally beeps back to life. Grace pulled out her phone with the satisfaction of a poker player revealing a royal flush. 3 years of recordings, officer. Every time Rachel screamed Dorothy. Every time she threw away her belongings. Every time she told her she was a burden, worthless, better off dead. "You recorded me?" Rachel's shriek could have shattered crystal. "That's illegal. That's..." Ohio is a one-party consent state. I'm Special Agent Thomas Bishop, FBI Financial Crimes Division. And yes, Grace Bishop is my mother. She called me 3 days ago with some very interesting recordings. My mind reeled. Grace's son was FBI? All those afternoons we'd shared tea talking about her boys and law enforcement, and I'd never connected. "Dorothy sent me copies of everything," Grace continued, moving to stand beside me like a bodyguard. "The bank documents, the forged signatures, the identity theft. And this morning, she gave me this." She held up a flash drive. Kevin's legs gave out. He sank into his chair, the same one where he'd eaten thousands of meals I'd cooked with love. "Mom, please, don't." The word came out harder than I intended, sharp enough to cut. "You lost the right to call me that when you practiced forging my signature, when you plotted with your wife to lock me away, when you chose money over the woman who gave up everything for you." Emma stood slowly, her face streaked with tears and mascara. She looked at her parents with eyes that had aged years in minutes. "I have it all on video. The slap, mom pushing grandma, everything." "Emma, baby," Rachel reached for her daughter. "Don't touch me." Emma backed away, clutching her phone like a shield. "You told Dad that Grandma was collateral damage. I heard you last week. You thought I was at practice, but I came home early. I heard everything."
Another witness, another recording, the net tightening around them like a cardiac compression band. Special Agent Bishop stepped forward. "Mr. Walsh, Mrs. Walsh, I need you both to stand and place your hands behind your backs." "This is insane," Kevin tried one last time, his courtroom voice cracking. "She's my mother. We were trying to help her. She's obviously confused, making wild accusations." I pulled myself up, ignoring the screaming pain in my hip, and stood tall. 75 years old, probably fractured hip, but I stood like I had during 36-hour shifts, like I had beside Harold's deathbed, like I had at Kevin's law school graduation when I was the only parent there who'd worked 3 jobs to pay for it. Bank records don't lie. Security cameras don't lie. Recorded conversations don't lie. The only liars in this room are the 2 people who swore they loved me while plotting to bury me alive in a nursing home. Agent Bishop nodded to his fellow officers who had arrived as backup.
Kevin Walsh, you're under arrest for elder abuse, wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Rachel Walsh, you're under arrest for the same charges plus assault. I want my lawyer, Kevin shouted as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the same wrists I'd kissed when he was a baby, checking his pulse, marveling at the life I'd created. You'll need a better one than your gambling buddy, Agent Bishop said. We picked up Mark Thompson an hour ago. He's already talking, trying to cut a deal. Fascinating story about a lawyer with a gambling problem and a wife with expensive tastes. Rachel broke completely. This is her fault, she pointed at me with her cuffed hands. She hoarded that money while we struggled. Kevin worked himself sick building his practice while she sat on hundreds of thousands. What kind of mother does that? The kind who saved for 40 years. The kind who wore shoes with holes so her son could have new ones. The kind who thought she was saving for a retirement where she might finally rest, maybe travel, maybe just exist without worrying about the next bill. Mom, Kevin's voice broke like it had when he was 7, asking why Daddy wasn't coming home. The kind who would have given it all to you anyway. I continued, each word a nail in the coffin of our relationship. If you'd asked, if you'd told me the truth, I would have helped you, Kevin. That's what mothers do. His sob was ugly, real, the first honest emotion I'd seen from him in years. I'm sorry. No. I turned away as they led him past. The house emptied slowly. Family members who'd sat silent during dinner suddenly found their voices, approaching me with apologies, offers of help, expressions of shock. Margaret hugged me, whispering, I should have spoken up sooner. I knew something was wrong.
But I only had eyes for Emma, standing lost in the wreckage of her family, still clutching her phone like a lifeline. Come here, sweetheart, I said, opening my arms despite the pain. She flew into them, sobbing against my shoulder the way she had as a little girl with skinned knees. I'm sorry, Grandma. I should have told you what I heard. I should have... Shh. I stroked her hair, seeing not the teenager but the baby I'd rocked while Rachel was at spin class. You were brave today. Braver than any of the adults. What's going to happen to me? The question came out small, frightened. I pulled back to look at her face. You'll stay with me if you want. We'll figure it out together. Grace appeared at my elbow, her son behind her. The paramedics are here, Dorothy. You need to get that hip looked at. I nodded, exhaustion hitting me like a failed code blue. As the EMTs helped me onto the stretcher, I looked around the dining room one last time. The table still set with my mother's china, the food cold and congealing, the Persian rug stained with wine like blood. This morning I'd dreaded this dinner, knowing what was coming. Now, strapped to a stretcher with my granddaughter holding one hand and my true friend holding the other, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Free. Ma'am? The young EMT looked concerned. Are you in pain? You're crying. I touched my face, surprised to find tears, but for the first time in 3 days, maybe 3 years, they weren't tears of betrayal or fear. I'm fine, I said, squeezing Emma's hand. Sometimes things have to break completely before they can heal right. As they wheeled me out of the ambulance, I caught sight of the neighbors gathered on their lawns, watching my son and his wife being placed in separate police cars. Tomorrow, it would be gossip, social media posts, shame and scandal. But tonight, it was justice. And that was enough. Grace, I called as they loaded me into the ambulance. Will you? I'll follow in my car with Emma, she assured me. We'll be right behind you. As the ambulance doors closed and we pulled away from the house where I had raised my son, where I had discovered his betrayal, where I had finally stood up for myself, I let the pain medication the EMT offered wash through me. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, not for me this time, but carrying my son to a cage of his own making. The slap still burned on my cheek,
But I was still standing. Broken, maybe. Betrayed, certainly. But not beaten. Never beaten.
The morphine couldn't touch the real pain. As I lay in the hospital bed at Riverside Medical, the same hospital where I'd saved lives for 35 years, my hips screamed with each breath. Fractured in 2 places, the doctor said. Surgery in the morning. But the broken bones were nothing compared to the hemorrhaging in my heart where my son used to live. Grandma? Emma hadn't left my side in 6 hours. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her perfect teenage makeup destroyed, revealing the frightened child underneath. Dad's lawyer is here. He wants to talk to you. Tell him to go to hell, Grace said from her chair by the window, not looking up from her knitting. She'd been creating the same row for an hour, her needles clicking like angry teeth. But I was curious. What could Kevin possibly say now? Send him in, I said, adjusting the bed to sit up straighter despite the lightning bolts of pain. The man who entered wasn't what I expected. Not one of Kevin's gambling buddies or courthouse cronies, but an older gentleman with kind eyes and silver temples. He looked like somebody's grandfather. Mrs. Walsh, I'm James Patterson from Legal Aid. The court appointed you to your son's case. He can't afford his usual attorney. His accounts have been frozen. I almost laughed. The irony was exquisite. My son, who'd stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars, now relying on a public defender. What does he want? My voice came out harder than I intended. He wants to make a deal, full confession, testimony against his wife and Mark Thompson, in exchange for a reduced sentence. Patterson shifted uncomfortably. He's also claiming diminished capacity due to gambling addiction and coercion from Mrs. Walsh. Coercion? Now I did laugh, bitter as black coffee. She held a gun to his head while he practiced my signature? He says she threatened to leave him, take Emma, destroy his reputation if he didn't comply. The lawyer pulled out a tablet. He's documented everything, dates, amounts, where the money went. He wants to return what's left. What's left? Emma asked before I could. Approximately $43,000 in an offshore account Rachel didn't know about. He was skimming from the skimming, apparently. Insurance against her betraying him.
Even in theft, my son had been calculating, planning. The little boy who'd shared his Halloween candy equally had become a man who betrayed everyone, including his co-conspirators. And in return, I asked, he wants your victim impact statement to include a request for leniency, mention his childhood, how he was a good son before this. Help him avoid the maximum sentence. Grace's knitting needles stopped. Emma's hand tightened on mine. The hospital room felt suddenly airless, like all the oxygen had been sucked out by the audacity of the request. "Get out!" I whispered. "Mrs. Walsh, please consider. Get out!" The scream tore from my throat, primal and raw. Tell my son that I spent 30 years of night shifts considering him. Tell him I considered him every time I ate ramen for dinner so he could have steak. Tell him I considered him when I wore the same coat for 15 winters so he could have the latest everything. The monitors beside my bed erupted in alarms, my heart rate spiking, blood pressure soaring. A nurse rushed in, Melody, who'd started as a new grad when I was charge nurse. "Dorothy, you need to calm down," she said, checking the monitors. But her eyes were wet. She'd heard everything. Patterson retreated, mumbling apologies. As the door closed behind him, I fell back against the pillows, exhausted. 43,000, I said to the ceiling. He kept 43,000 as insurance, not to return to me, but to protect himself from Rachel. "I hate him," Emma said quietly. "I hate them both." I turned to look at my granddaughter.
seeing myself at 16, another girl whose father had disappeared, though mine had the decency to die rather than choose greed. Don't waste your energy on hate, sweetheart. It's like drinking poison and expecting them to die. But even as I said it, I tasted the poison on my own tongue. The next morning, as they wheeled me into surgery, Agent Bishop was waiting in pre-op. Sorry to bother you before your procedure, but I thought you should know. Mark Thompson gave us everything. Your son wasn't just gambling, he was laundering money through the casino for Thompson's drug connections. Your money was being used to clean dirty cash.
The pre-op nurse, another former colleague, pretended not to listen as she inserted my IV. How long? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. 2 years, maybe longer. Thompson has records going back to when Kevin first got in trouble. Your Christmas money, birthday gifts, it all went to cover gambling debts and launder funds. 2 years of I love you, Mom. 2 years of Mother's Day cards and birthday dinners and hugs that meant nothing. All performance, all lies. There's more, Agent Bishop continued. Rachel Walsh isn't her real name. It's Rebecca Steinberg. She's done this before, in Phoenix, in Dallas. Married men with elderly parents, isolated them, drained the accounts. Your son was her fourth mark. I closed my eyes, processing this. My son wasn't just a thief, he was a victim too. But victims don't practice forging their mother's signature. Victims don't slap the woman who raised them. She has 3 warrants in other states, Bishop added. She'll be transferred to federal custody after processing here. She's looking at 25 to life. And Kevin? With his cooperation, probably 7 to 10. Without it, he shrugged, 15 to 20. The anesthesiologist appeared. Ready, Mrs. Walsh? As the mask covered my face and the world began to fade, I had one last thought. My son would spend the next decade in a cage, and I would spend it free. I woke to find my room transformed into a garden. Flowers everywhere, from former colleagues, patients I'd saved, neighbors I'd barely known were watching. Grace sat in her same chair, but now Emma was asleep on the small couch, covered with a quilt I recognized from my hope chest. The surgery went well, Grace said, without looking up from her knitting. A new project, I noticed. A blanket in soft blues and greens. 3 pins in your hip, you'll need physical therapy, but you'll walk fine. How long was I out? 14 hours. You gave us a scare. Your heart rate dropped during surgery. They said it was like you were giving up. Maybe I was. Maybe part of me wanted to follow Harold, to escape this reality where my son was a monster and my savings were gone and my body was as broken as my trust. But you fought back, Grace continued. The surgeon said you stabilized the moment Emma asked to play your favorite song in recovery. What was it again? You are my sunshine, Emma said, awake now, moving to my bedside. I'm your medical proxy now. Dad can't make decisions for you anymore, and someone had to sign the surgical consents. Grace helped me with the paperwork.
16 years old, and she'd stepped up while her parents were being booked for their crimes against me. There's a social worker coming tomorrow, Grace added, about Emma's living situation. Her parents' assets are frozen. The house is being seized for evidence. She stays with me, I said firmly. We'll make it work. With what money? Emma asked, then immediately looked stricken. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... It's a fair question. I tried to sit up, winced, thought better of it. I have about $20,000 left in the account under my maiden name. This surgery will take most of it, but we'll figure it out. I raised your father on less. About that, Grace said, finally looking up with a smile that made her look 20 years younger. You have visitors. The door opened and people flooded in. Melody and the other nurses from Riverside, Dr. Chen, who'd been a resident when I was training him, Maria from the hospital cafeteria, whose son I'd tutored through nursing school, even Mr. Peterson from the bank. We heard what happened, Melody said, speaking for the group. What your son did, what you've been going through. Dr. Chen stepped forward. You trained half the nurses in this hospital, Dorothy, saved more lives than any of us can count, did it while raising a child alone, while stretching every penny. We've set up a GoFundMe, Maria added, pulling out her phone. It's only been live for 6 hours, but... She showed me the screen. $73,000. That's not possible, I breathed. Your story went viral, Emma explained. Someone leaked the video of Dot hitting you. The news picked it up. Heroic nurse betrayed by son she sacrificed everything for. You're trending on Twitter. I stared at the number, watching it tick up in real time. $73,500, $74,000. People are furious, Mr. Peterson said. The comments, thousands of them. Other parents sharing their stories, elder abuse victims, nurses talking about how you mentored them. Someone from Norway donated $5,000 because you reminded them of their grandmother. $75,000. More than Kevin had stolen initially. Strangers giving back what my son had taken. There's also this, Melody handed me an envelope, from the nursing union, emergency hardship fund, $20,000, no strings attached.
I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The monitor started alarming again, but this time from something that felt dangerously like hope. And I've been in touch with an estate attorney, Grace added. Pro bono. He says with the evidence you have, you can sue Kevin and Rachel's future earnings, garnish wages forever, essentially. Plus, there's a victims of crime fund that could pay up to $100,000. The house, I managed to whisper. Still yours, she confirmed. The forged deed was never filed, and since Kevin bought it with money you gifted him over the years, and he's going to prison for stealing from you, the attorney says you have a strong claim to full ownership. The room spun, not from pain or medication, but from the sudden reversal of fortune. This morning I'd been a broken woman with a broken hip and $20,000 to my name. Now, don't cry, Grandma, Emma said, but she was crying too. This is good news. I'm not crying, I lied, tears streaming down my face. Nurses don't cry. Everyone laughed, even me, though it sent lightning through my hip. One by one, they filed out, each leaving a card, a flower, a promise to visit. Soon it was just Grace, Emma, and me again. I don't understand, I said finally. Kevin was right about one thing. I'm just a 75-year-old woman. Nothing special. Grace set down her knitting and fixed me with a look that could have melted steel. Dorothy Walsh, you spent 40 years pouring yourself out for others. You saved lives, raised a child alone, volunteered at the food bank, taught Sunday school, mentored young nurses, never asked for anything back. Did you really think that would count for nothing? That people wouldn't remember? I didn't do it to be remembered. Exactly. That's why they remember. Emma's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face went pale. It's a text from Dad, from jail. My heart stuttered. What does it say? She turned the screen toward me. 3 words. I'm sorry, Mom. I stared at those words, waiting to feel something. Forgiveness? Anger? Hope? Nothing. They were just pixels on a screen from a stranger who happened to share my DNA. Block the number, I said. Emma nodded and did it without hesitation. Done. What about Mom? She'll probably try to contact me too. Your choice, but remember, she's not your mother. She's Rebecca Steinberg, and she's done this to 4 families. Then I never had a real mother, Emma said quietly. I squeezed her hand. You had me. You've always had me, and you always will. The next few days blurred together. Physical therapy that felt like torture, visits from lawyers, victims advocates, social workers. The GoFundMe climbed past $150,000. News crews camped outside the hospital until security chased them away.
Through it all, Emma stayed by my side, doing homework in the hospital chair, sleeping on the uncomfortable couch, helping me learn to walk again with my new walker, chrome and sturdy, nothing like the broken woman using it. On the 5th day, Agent Bishop returned with final numbers. We've recovered approximately $300,000 from various accounts, he reported. It will take time, court proceedings, asset forfeiture hearings, but most of it will eventually return to you. Most? Legal fees, court costs, processing, but Dorothy, with what's been recovered, the GoFundMe, the various funds and settlements, you're looking at close to $600,000. More than I'd ever had. More than I'd lost. All it had cost was my son. There's one more thing, he added, pulling out a tablet. Kevin wants to video call. From jail. You don't have to. No, I said firmly, then softer, but I'll write him a letter. One letter. After that, he's dead to me. That night, with Emma asleep and Grace finally gone home, I wrote, Kevin, you asked for my forgiveness through your lawyer. You texted an apology through a contraband phone. You want me to remember the good times to help you avoid the consequences of your choices. I remember everything. Teaching you to tie your shoes, walking you to school, sitting in the ER when you broke your arm at 10, pride at your law school graduation, joy at your wedding, love so fierce it physically hurt. I also remember practicing my signature for weeks, planning to lock me away, choosing money over mother, the sound your palm made against my cheek. You killed my son the day you decided I was worth less than your gambling debts. What sits in a jail cell is a stranger wearing his face. I'll raise Emma. I'll rebuild my life. I'll thrive despite what you tried to do, but I will not forgive you. Some betrayals cut too deep for healing. You wanted my money more than my love. Now you have neither. The woman who used to be your mother. I sealed it, addressed it to the county jail, and set it on the bedside table. Tomorrow, Emma and I would go home, to my house, free and clear. We'd sort through the wreckage, donate Kevin's belongings, turn his office into her bedroom. We'd heal together, 2 generations of women betrayed by those who should have protected them. The GoFundMe would pay for her college, the fund Kevin had pretended to maintain. The recovered money would ensure we lived comfortably. The love of strangers would cushion what family had torn apart. Grandma? Emma stirred on the couch. You okay? Yes, sweetheart. Just thinking. About Dad? About us. About tomorrow. About how sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born with. She smiled sleepily. I choose you, Grandma, always. And I choose you, my darling girl, always. As she drifted back to sleep, I looked out the window at the lights of Columbus, the city where I'd worked, sacrificed, survived. Somewhere in that darkness, my son sat in a cell. His wife, Rebecca, not Rachel, in another.
But here, in this room filled with flowers from people who actually loved me, with my granddaughter safe and my future secure, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Whole. Not despite the broken pieces, but because of them. Because sometimes you have to shatter completely to rebuild stronger. My hip would heal, the surgical scars would fade, the bruise on my cheek was already turning yellow-green. But the mark Kevin left on my heart would remain forever. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. I survived. I fought back. I won. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. 9 months later, the morning sun painted my new kitchen gold. Not the kitchen where Kevin learned to walk, but the one Grace and I chose together in our duplex. We'd bought it with cash, my name alone on the deed this time. No forgeries possible. Grandma, you're doing it again, Emma said, setting down her coffee. She'd grown 2 inches and gained something indefinable, a steadiness that came from surviving betrayal and choosing love anyway. Doing what? Staring at that letter. Kevin's latest attempt sat unopened on our breakfast table, marked with the prison's return address, the 15th one. I'd returned them all, unopened, refused, written in the same careful handwriting he'd forged. Throw it away, I said, turning back to the stove where Grace's famous pancakes sizzled. We took turns cooking now, family by choice, not chance. Emma tossed it in the trash without ceremony. Mom tried calling again, from federal prison this time. I didn't answer. Rebecca Steinberg had gotten 23 years. The other families she destroyed had testified, their stories eerily similar to mine.
Kevin got 12 years with good behavior. The man who'd slapped me would be nearing 60 when released, older than his father ever got to be. "Good girl," Grace said, entering through our shared door. "No point dwelling on ghosts." But we weren't dwelling. We were living. The elder abuse support group met in our living room every Tuesday, 50 members now, each carrying their own story of betrayal, finding strength in shared pain. Last week, Margaret Chen had cried, telling us how her daughter had sold her house while she was in the hospital. This week, she'd hired a lawyer. "Dorothy Walsh, you saved my life," she'd said, gripping my hands. "If you could fight back at 75, so can I at 80. The doorbell rang. Probably the news crew. The story had evolved from local scandal to national conversation about elder abuse. 60 Minutes wanted an interview. I'd said yes, not for fame, but for the millions suffering in silence, afraid their children's love was conditional on their bank balance. But it wasn't reporters at the door. It was Mr. Peterson from the bank, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. "Dorothy, I hope I'm not intruding. I have news." We gathered in the living room, my real family now. Emma, Grace, and the woman who'd survived. "The FBI found more hidden accounts," he said, barely containing his excitement. "In the Cayman Islands, Switzerland. Rachel, Rebecca, had been stockpiling. They're seizing it all." "How much?" Emma asked. 800,000. Stolen from all her victims, but the courts are dividing it based on documented losses. Your share would be approximately 300,000 more. I sank into my chair, the good one that didn't hurt my surgically repaired hip. 300,000 more? Added to the GoFundMe, the recovered funds, the victim's compensation, I was wealthier now than before Kevin's betrayal. "There's also this," he handed me an envelope. "From the nursing union. They're creating the Dorothy Walsh Foundation for Elder Protection. They want you to run it. Salary, benefits, the works." "I'm 75, I protested. "And you've become the national face of fighting back," he countered. "They need someone who understands both sides, the medical and the betrayal." Emma squeezed my shoulder. "Do it, Grandma. Help others like you helped me." Like I helped her. This child who'd watched her parents destroy everything, who'd chosen love over blood, who called me mom now when she thought I wasn't listening. "I'll think about it," I said, but we all knew I'd accept. Purpose had always been my oxygen. That evening, as Emma did homework and Grace taught her knitting, I sat at my computer. The blank document stared back, waiting for the victim impact statement the court required for Kevin's appeal hearing. I'd written it 15 times, each version angrier than the last. But tonight, watching my chosen family and our home built on honesty, not lies, I found different words. "Your Honor, they say blood is thicker than water, but blood can be poisoned, and water gives life. Kevin Walsh was my son for 48 years. He was a thief for the last 3. The math doesn't balance the betrayal, but it clarifies the choice. I choose to remember the child, mourn the man, and protect others from the monster. He asks for leniency. I ask for justice. Not just for me, but for every parent whose trust fund is their child's temptation, whose love is measured in dollars, whose sacrifice is seen as an ATM. I've rebuilt my life with stronger foundations, friends who became family, a granddaughter who chose goodness, strangers whose kindness healed what cruelty broke. I'm wealthier now in ways that matter. Kevin Walsh took my money. He didn't take my worth. Keep him where he is, not from vengeance, but protection, mine and society's. Some slaps echo forever. His will echo through steel bars. Dorothy Walsh, mother to Emma, daughter to no one. I printed it, signed it with the signature he'd practiced forging, steady, unshakable, mine. "Grandma," Emma appeared in my doorway, "there's something on the news." We gathered around the TV,
A breaking story. Major elder fraud ring busted. Authorities credit Dorothy Walsh case. 17 arrests across 6 states. Millions recovered. Families reunited with stolen assets. All because one 75-year-old woman refused to go quietly into that good nursing home. "You did that," Grace said softly. "You changed things." "We did that," I corrected. "All of us who refused to be victims." The next morning brought spring and possibilities. Emma's acceptance letter to pre-med arrived. She wanted to be a nurse, like the grandmother who actually raised me. The GoFundMe had exceeded $400,000, enough for medical school and beyond. At the mailbox, I found another letter from Kevin. Without thinking, I opened it. "Mom, I know you hate me. I hate myself. But I need you to know, Rachel drugged me, controlled me. The gambling was her idea. I was weak, not evil. Please, Mom, just one visit. Let me explain. Your son." I read it twice, feeling nothing. No anger, no pain, just the mild curiosity of reading strangers' mail.
Emma found me there, holding the letter. "Do you believe him? Does it matter? Even if every word is true, he still chose. Every signature he forged, every lie he told, every time he looked me in the eye while planning my imprisonment, those were choices. So what do we do?" I handed her the letter. "Whatever you want. He's your father, biologically. That decision is yours." She read it, shook her head, and tore it into confetti that scattered in the spring breeze. "I already have a parent, the one who stayed." We walked back together, her arm supporting me, though I no longer needed it. My hip had healed stronger than before, like everything else about me. Inside, Grace was cooking breakfast, humming with songs she'd learned from her grandmother. Our duplex smelled like coffee and possibility, like homes where women weren't afraid, where love wasn't conditional, where family meant choice, not chromosomes. "I've decided," I announced. "I'll take the foundation job, but only part-time. I have a granddaughter to raise, a best friend to grow old with, and a life to live." Emma hugged me, careful of my hip, from habit, not necessity. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, sweetheart, forever and always, no matter what." And I meant it. Love without conditions, without price tags, without fear. That's what Kevin never understood. Real love doesn't count costs. It doesn't forge signatures or plan betrayals or slap the faces that kissed away tears. Real love stands guard in hospital rooms, holds steady through storms, chooses connection over cash. The morning news reported Kevin's appeal had been denied. 12 years remained 11 and a half. By the time he emerged, Emma would be a doctor, I'd be 86 if I lived, and the Dorothy Walsh Foundation would have saved thousands from suffering our fate. His slap had started it all. The investigation, the revelation, the revolution of elders refusing to be erased. In trying to silence me, he'd given me a megaphone. In trying to steal my worth, he'd multiplied it. In choosing money over mother, he'd lost both. The sun climbed higher, warming our kitchen where 3 generations of women had found each other in the wreckage of betrayal. Emma studied for her MCATs, Grace knitted blankets for the women's shelter, I typed my first column for AARP about recognizing elder abuse. Life moved forward, fuller than before, richer in ways no bank could measure. And somewhere in Columbus Federal Correctional Institution, a man who used to be my son was learning what I'd always known. You can steal money. You can break trust.
You can even slap the woman who gave you life. But you can't kill love that chooses to survive. You can only free it to find its true home. If Dorothy's story touched your heart, remember, elder abuse hides in plain sight, often wearing familiar faces. Watch for the signs. Speak up. Fight back. Because every parent deserves to age with dignity, not fear their own children. You are not alone. You are not powerless. You are worth more than your bank balance. Always.
My dear friends, if you've stayed with me through Dorothy's story, perhaps it's because you saw something of yourself in her pain or in her triumph. Maybe you're sitting alone right now, wondering if your children only call when they need something. Maybe you're checking your bank statements with shaking hands, afraid of what you might find. Or perhaps you're simply tired, so very tired of feeling invisible in a world that worships youth. I want to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. Your life is not over. Your worth is not diminished. Your story is still being written. At 75, 80, or 90, you are not a burden. You are a library of wisdom that walking smartphones could never replace. Every wrinkle on your face is a chapter of survival. Every gray hair is a medal of honor from battles nobody else could have fought. You survived wars, recessions, heartbreaks, and losses that would crumble today's generation. You raised children without Google, healed wounds without WebMD, and built lives without Instagram validation. You are magnificent, even if no one tells you anymore. Yes, sometimes our children disappoint us. Sometimes they see our savings as their inheritance, arriving early. Sometimes they forget that we were people before we were parents, that we had dreams, desires, and dancing shoes before we had diaper bags. But here's the secret they don't want you to know. You don't need their permission to be happy. Find your grace, that friend who sees you, not your age. Join that water aerobics class, even if your knees complain. Write that memoir, even if it's just for your drawer. Adopt that cat who will love you unconditionally, unlike some humans we've raised. Eat dessert first. Wear the bright lipstick. Take the cruise. Join the book club. Learn to text, not for them, but for you. Your happiness is not selfish. It's revolutionary. Every time you choose joy over bitterness, you rebel against a world that wants to warehouse you. Every time you laugh loudly in public, you remind someone that aging isn't a disease, it's an achievement. Every time you stand up for yourself, like Dorothy did, you give another elder permission to do the same. And if you're afraid of being alone, remember this. Family isn't just blood. It's the neighbor who checks on you during heat waves. It's the grocery clerk who knows your name. It's the doctor who really listens. It's the stranger on the bus who offers their seat, seeing your value when your own children don't. You've earned the right to boundaries. You've earned the right to say no to disrespect, even from those you birthed. You've earned the right to spend your money on yourself. Every penny saved from decades of sacrifice, that's not greed, that's justice. Most importantly, you've earned the right to be loved properly, starting with loving yourself. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for visits that might never come. Don't wait for apologies from children who see your love as an ATM. Start today. Start now. Start with one small act of self-kindness. Because you, my dear friend, are not just surviving. You're still becoming. And that's the most beautiful revenge of all.